And good afternoon. Thanks, Sierra. I appreciate the intro there. And remember, everybody, as you guys are going ahead and sending your questions, do so in the chat. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the August edition of the CaptureCast. I'm your host, Chris Harris, and I serve as the Senior Enrollment Strategist here at Capture Higher Ed. I just finished my first complete year at Capture and have learned a ton about marketing and enrollment for higher education, especially on the digital side. And we're going to hopefully give you some tips and some ideas on how you should be doing it today. But today we're going to hear from some of the best in the industry when maximizing your search campaign. The ability to recruit a strong class starts with the search process, which everybody's probably really deep into right now. What was once a straightforward process of buying hundreds of thousands of names, mailing out the direct mail and the postcards and the search pieces and extensive travel from high school to high school and college fair to college fair has now morphed into a multi-channel digital experience. Gen Z expects that we are to be contacting them at several different methods during this enrollment process in a dynamic yet authentic manner. So for today's CaptureCast, here are some questions that we are going to try and solve for you today. First one is, how can we leverage what we know and the goals that we want to achieve to create a better method for name purchases? So we're going to work on how we go about purchasing those names and what needs to happen when you're doing that. Second, what's the anatomy behind creating the best messaging to create an experience for your prospective students? It's not just about throwing pictures out there and throwing words on an email or in an ad. There's actual science to it, and we're going to talk about that today. And lastly, what channels should we be engaging to reach students and their families, and how do we measure it for efficacy? And speed to relevance when we're working with families. So, as we get started today, as always, we like to find out what's going on in your world. So, as you think about your search campaign design from top to bottom, buying the names, creating your collateral, and actually implementing it, how would you classify your current search campaign? And Sarah, go ahead and put the poll up. But our efforts are focused, and we're getting what we need. We're getting better at using data, but struggle to do so. We have stuck to the "this is what we always do" mentality, and there's no real design or plan for purchase. We just throw money out there and get it. So everybody, just go ahead and plug in an answer there. We'll give you a couple seconds to think about it. And let us know what you think of your search campaign. And should have music behind this as we go through it. Okay, let's go ahead and pull it down and see what our results are. So, it's 50-50. There's no real designer plan. We just purchase and we just do it. That's great. And we have stuck to this for a long, long time. So that is both encouraging and it is scary at the same time. So hopefully today we'll be able to show you some tips and some ideas, things that you can implement, and then also how you might be able to work with us a little bit more in this process. So a little bit about us. Capture. For those of you who don't know us, we are a leading enrollment marketing firm that believes that every interaction counts. Every email, every website page, every digital ad, every text message you send has to be relevant and personal to that prospective student. Using higher education's only behavioral intelligence platform, we are the very best at identifying, converting, and enrolling the right students. And when we talk about the platform, the behavioral intelligence platform is driven by real-time data, our team of enrollment experts, and you're going to meet 3 of them today. I put together the dream team for today. I cannot wait for you to meet them. And so we have a team of enrollment experts, customer relations specialists, real data scientists that help our partner institutions navigate this very dynamic, ever-changing higher education recruitment landscape. With one platform that integrates marketing automation and the entire enrollment lifecycle of predictive models, our teams of experts ensures that your recruitment and marketing efforts are helping you reach your enrollment goals. And I think it's important to stop here for a second and pause and talk about the platform. The platform is one platform that brings all of the predictive models together, whether it's search, whether it's travel, whether it's apply, aid, enroll, It's all in one platform. You're not pulling different pieces from different places and putting it into one place and trying to figure it all out. It's integrated into one platform. We are the only organization that has one platform that does all of those things for you. And then we integrate the marketing automation and the behavioral intelligence behind it, which nobody else does. So give you an idea of what we're doing. Really want to bring in the dream team today and go ahead and talk a little bit about them in a second here. They'll pop up here in a minute, but Gretchen Bree, our senior enrollment advisor, is here. Sarah Eckert, our director of creative operations, is here. And then also Tabitha Bauer, our senior digital media strategist, is here. And we are going to have a great time talking to them about what you can do to make your search better. So when we talk about search, search has really evolved. It has morphed into a more of a multifaceted approach. Yes, higher education will do print. Yes, higher education will travel. We'll travel to high schools, college fairs, and transfer partners. That's just part of it. But this ever-evolving multi-channel marketing mixes have brought several channels into a unified strategy to attract students and their families. This interaction with your digital and your personal assets is what's creating that brand affinity. This approach efficiently and effectively communicates your institution's value using unique strengths of specific marketing channels. These channels include, but are not limited to, obviously, email. We've been doing email for a long time. Direct mail, we've been doing direct mail a long time. Your website, we've been doing that. But now, over the last, probably 7 to 10 years, we've added in social media, display advertising, and things like that. So as it evolves and as you start to work with students, you need to be working on this multi-channel approach. First, here's why you do that. First, you expand your reach. Many students interact on a limited number of channels. So by expanding your campaigns to encompass more channels, it's possible to find customers with untapped purchasing potential. Second, you increase engagement. Increased channels often translate into a higher number of potential touch points. That doesn't only give students more opportunities to engage with you, but it also opens up new channels of communication between you, their students, families, guidance counselors, etc. So another thing is that you want to reach them where they are. Students interact with many different media social sources every day. So they're on Facebook, they're on Instagram, they're checking out TikTok. Instead of you waiting them to find you as an enrollment leader, you must uncover which channels these students prefer to use and meet them where they are. Combined channels are more effective. So when we create a strategy that ties together campaigns from multimedia channels, it creates opportunities for us to make more impactful messages, which we're going to talk about today, and that are mindful of students' enrollment journey. Remember, this is a journey that they're on. Sometimes it's for 2 years, maybe it's 2 months, but there is a journey that's involved. It's possible to mix and match a variety of channels and messages to drive interactions and nudge that student through the enrollment process. But it all starts with search. So let's go ahead and bring in the dream team. And ladies, I'd love to bring you guys in so we can start to talk about it. And it's good to see everybody. Let's do some introductions first. Gretchen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure, thanks, Chris. Gretchen Bree, Senior Enrollment Advisor. I've been with Capture for 8 years. Prior to onboarding at Capture, I actually worked on the flip side of the desk and worked in a small private liberal arts institution as Director of Enrollment and grew up as an admissions counselor. So.
Awesome, Gretchen. It's good to see you. Truth be told, Gretchen was my account executive when I was working in the higher ed industry not too long ago as well. So Gretchen and I go way back. Sarah, why don't you go ahead and say hello?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name is Sarah Eckert. I am the Director of Creative Operations here at Capture. I've been here for a little over 9.5 years. And prior to working at Capture, I did some marketing design for higher education institutions at a couple other companies as well.
Awesome, and good to see you, Sarah. Sarah is the one that makes everything look good. She makes sure all the words are right. She makes everything look good. Her and her team are outstanding. And last but not least, Tabitha, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I'm Tabitha Bauer. I'm our senior digital marketing strategist here at Capture. I'm also, like Chris, pretty new to the team. I'm just coming up on 6 months. Prior to joining Capture, I spent most of my career in enrollment marketing for anything from K-12 marketing all through college and also in ed tech. Really happy to be here today.
That's awesome. Thank you, ladies, again for taking the time out of the day. I know you guys are super busy working with our partners and making sure everything is outstanding. As we get started, Gretchen, I really want to bring you in and really let's talk about leveraging that data to purchase the right names. Search has changed a ton, as you and I both know. After all the years we've been doing it on our respective campuses before joining Capture. But that all starts with buying the right names. Why don't you walk us through what you would do when you're working with our partners to make sure that we're getting the right names for them?
Sure. Thanks. So I think there are essentially four key components to making sure that the names that you're purchasing, you're going to get the most from. We know that you're not going to convert every single search name that you've purchased or outsourced name that you've purchased, but we want to make sure that you're hitting the goals and that you know what your goals are as you continue to use this as a strategy in the toolbox. So number one, I think researching and establishing goals, knowing historically, if you've purchased search historically, you know, what that looks like, how that has impacted your application, and even the inquiry pool as well, all the way through your enrolled pool. It's great if you're getting a lot of inquiries and applications, but not necessarily if you're not able to convert those. So I think looking at previous history, knowing who those students are that actually enroll from search and using that as a foundation to help then build strategy around search. It's also crucial to establish goals. How many search names do you need to be able to get X number of applications that you're looking for at a certain conversion rate? So using that historical data, I think, is super helpful in being able to make sure that you've established goals and that you have solid, realistic goals. The second thing, I think, obviously you have to have a budget to go ahead and work in search and purchase names and have a plan to market to those names once you have them. So I think knowing what kind of a budget you can put towards search, as you work with folks that are out there, you'll find, you know, some people purchase hundreds and thousands of names. Other institutions can get by really focusing in on a certain number of names that is drastically less, but maybe a more focused search. Maybe you're using filters. Maybe you're searching students from, if you're, you know, a religiously affiliated school, maybe you're searching students that have an interest in that type of school. So being able to really know who it is that you're looking for and to be able to make sure that you have a budget that you're following, to know the number of names that you actually can afford to purchase and market to.
Hey, Gretchen, let me ask a question. One of the things that we've been talking about, and we are partners with Ancora and with the College Board as well, is this name purchasing thing that happens over time now. Back in the day when I first started, we were doing the 5 cycles of College Board, or there was only 5 times that you would buy during the year, but now it's become more of a continuous kind of buy.
It,
How do you think that's going to affect budget and budget thought processes?
I think, again, you have to rely somewhat on some historical analysis there, looking back at what points during time did you purchase large volumes of names. For instance, we're in August, so a lot of folks right now are wrapping up senior purchases, but really focusing heavily on trying to pull junior and maybe even sophomore names. It is not just a couple times a year going out and buying names anymore. Literally, with College Board and Ancora, they're pouring new names into their systems on a daily basis. You could literally run a new search daily and pull new names for that. So what Capture tries to do with our partner institutions is get them on a regular basis of at least a monthly basis, where we're out there and we're finding new names that meet criteria based on what the institution's applications look like at that point in time, what geographies, which I'll talk about here in just a few minutes, where we're doing in certain geographies. Do we need to go back in a market and get some additional names because that market is lagging? So utilizing those tools now throughout the year, not just specifically at certain points in time in which now they release the data. They literally release the data daily now, so you can pick them up quite frequently.
I was thinking about, speed to relevance a little bit too, and you're talking about geography, where and who, and I know Tabitha and I are going to talk a little bit about that later with lookalikes, but um, there's a population shift that's happening right now, and people are going to have to start thinking about expanding their search but doing it in a meaningful way. And I think that's an important point that you make, is that we are poised to be able to use data not only of previous years, but what is out there in the marketplace.
Yes, and the other thing I think we have that I'm is actually leading right into where I'm going in our toolbox is third most important thing I think with search is geography and knowing where and who you need to purchase. The nice thing about Capture is that we have a model built in the background that we utilize for our search partners that helps us find markets that are like those that have students that apply to a certain institution. And so utilizing that, we're able to really hone in on the volume and the names that we're purchasing for an institution and get out of this habitual history of I need to purchase 100,000 names because I need to cover all of these areas, even though I may not be yielding in this area. We're really getting down to purchasing the names that we feel are going to have the highest chance of converting, and we're using our models in the back to do that, our search model, and then as you mentioned earlier, Chris, the application model when it comes time to marketing and who should we be marketing to with these students, and utilizing our models in the background for that. So just want to cover quickly with geography again. The tool that one of the features I like best about Capture's tool is that it does help our partners look into with the shrinking population, and we know everybody's vying for less students out there. It does give us the ability to look at other markets that they may not have been considering before, but that have some really high predicted areas of students that live in those areas that are from areas and like those students that apply to the institution. So when thinking about expanding to maybe a secondary or even tertiary markets, this is a really great tool that we have that we can use and help partners define where those markets should be. And then last thing is to integrate multiple sources. So it's not just a hey, buy all our names from College Board or buy all our names from Quora. I think a big piece of that is looking at where you're buying names from and what type of test, if students are testing in that market they're taking. So not just blanket going out there and saying we're going to purchase all College Board names that we can, and then we're going to turn around and purchase all names from Quora or ACT that we can, but really getting strategic about where in terms of geography is best to be using the different sources at. Other sources that partners often use that will help to try and generate inquiries. So Christian Connector has been another one. Those names typically we see a great conversion on because they're specifically looking for some type of a religiously affiliated institution. And so that's a really good source of names for some small liberal arts institutions that have that affiliation. Niche, CapEx, College Board I mentioned, and within College Board, you've got SAT names, you've got PSAT names, you have AP names, so multiple options within College Board to be able to pull names from different sources and based on what year you might be searching. And then obviously for our transfer searches, Phi Theta Kappa is one that oftentimes our partners will use as well.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, search has changed a little bit when it used to be just a lot of, big purchases from ACT or SAT and being able to pretty much get away with about 80% of or 90% of your buy that way. And
And
now it's
maybe
just
doing
optional.
big purchases in July or August of a student's senior year was a lot of times a trend as well. We're going to purchase 80,000 names and we're going to do it in June or July as these students are seniors. Whereas now, we're getting into that trend of purchasing students earlier in the process, which is helping to then market to them over the course of time and get them warmed up and familiar with your brand so that by the time they are, ready for application, it's not the first time they're hearing from you.
Right. And we know that Gen Z takes a very long time to build that brand affinity with you. But once they do, they'll interact with you 80% of the time that you send them something. So,
Yes.
you have to build that over time. So that's great insight. So, okay, so we've purchased all of our names. We've purchased 1 million names with Gretchen. Here we've got all these names, and let's talk to Sarah. Sarah, we bring it in now and we think about how we communicate. But first thing we do is we see it visually. When we eat, we see our food first. We visually get into that. So let's talk a little bit about building that creative to reach your audience, to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to engage with those students.
Yeah, so to cover this part, I've kind of broken it down into 3 different buckets. The first being connection, which is focused on who you're messaging, followed by relevance, which is really just focused on their behaviors or what they're doing. And then the third piece is creating an experience. And this is where you're going to focus on a lot of those multi-channel communications because you want to reach them where they are at the time.
So when we talk about connection and we bring those people together, then um, how are we building that? What is the best way to go about doing that?
Yeah, so with your messaging, especially, you want to make sure that you are connecting with the students, just like we're saying, connection. So you do that a lot of times by creating the content based on who they are, their interests, and what they care about. So, when you're buying search names, you have specific goals in mind. So based on the qualities of those search names, you can segment them out into different groups so that you can tailor your messaging to what will really resonate with them. So you can create campaigns for those groups with the language that they will understand and with visuals that really fit with what you're looking to tell them. So with these first examples, if you're speaking to a group of people that are interested in education degrees, you make sure that the imagery that you're using is related. You don't want to have a medical image when you're doing a business campaign. That's one of the really obvious things, but I think that it really illustrates the point pretty well to kind of get that point across.
I think one of the things that you see though is that you still see, the generic photographs a lot of times for college campuses. They're still using stock photos that they've bought from somebody else instead of taking the time to really beef up their own artwork, as we would call it in the industry. But I think the other part that's real important is how you lay that out and bring it together. But when we talk a little bit about relevance now, Sarah, when we talk about relevance, I think one of the things that we talk about is Gen Z wants to know that the message that they're getting is authentic, that it's personalized to them. To your point, it's about the experience. We'll talk about that in a second. Don't get me
Mhm.
wrong. But talk a little bit about relevance and what that means.
Yeah, so with relevance, you're really wanting to focus on what they're doing. And so in this area, we can really leverage the prospect data that we have, as well as the behavioral data that we're able to gather. So we can give them messages at the times that they're actually looking for it. Um, if they're searching for institutions in your area that offer a business degree, we can find them and communicate with them through Google search campaigns, which Tabitha will touch on a little bit later. But if they're on your website and they're looking at something very specific, we can serve them content based on the behaviors and what they're looking at, what they're doing. So we know that this is something that will resonate with them at that time. So
So
this example that I have here, really quick, visitors were on the website and they had a record created in our platform. And as they're on the website, they're looking at specific pages, specific things. After they leave the website, we have their contact info. We know what they were interested in and the info that they wanted. So we're able to send them an email with that information to kind of keep the institution top of mind.
Well, I think that's an important distinction, Sarah, that we need to make here is the use of the behavioral data that we are capturing. I'm using all these great buzzwords today that we're capturing so that we can engage with the prospective student where they are when they are.
Exactly.
A lot of times, if you're using your CRM, and CRMs are great. I mean, you can pick one out there, and a lot of the CRMs are doing things, and they're sending out, your emails or they're texting for you and things like that. But those are set times that those things happen. When someone's visiting your website, you have the opportunity to, when they leave the website, to Sarah's point, 25 minutes later, half hour later, depending upon the rule that we set up on the backside with you, you can have an engaged email sent. They can be served an ad or something else like that at the same time. But it's based upon their behavior at the time that they're there. So if they're in there looking at your financial aid stuff, 2 hours later, you may send an email out saying, hey, and that email may fire at 3 o'clock in the morning, but they're going to get it. And it says, hey, here's some information about that. So I think that's an important distinction to make here. And I think a lot of times, in your results here on this one email were fantastic, by the way. I think it
Yeah,
had a lot to do with the excitement of the
the
picture
piece
and
that
the
I
message that was behind it.
the piece that I really like to point out about this one is the conversion rate. It's a 20% conversion rate, but everyone who clicked on a link in this email ended up applying to the institution.
Right.
So I think that that's huge.
Yeah, I think that's huge. And let's talk about it, because you've talked a little bit about the experience now. I think that's the one thing that is interesting, is that we're creating this digital experience for students as we walk through the journey. So let's talk about experience.
Yeah, so to do this, you really want to have some kind of continuity in your multi-channel campaigns, because wherever the prospect is, that's where you want to meet them with your messaging. That doesn't necessarily mean that everything is the same. You just want the viewer to recognize that the things are related. So, I have a couple of examples on here. In this first one, it's a visit day event. Prospects receive a postcard from the school saying, hey, we have a couple of dates here, sign up and visit us. But then later, when they're on the website, they get a toaster message that it looks a little bit different, but it uses a lot of the same verbiage. And it's a little bit of a snippet of information, because they can always click and get more info. So it's a different kind of channel, and you can adjust your messaging that way. The second one is very similar. Based on a list-based advertising campaign, they see something for the spring showcase. And then later, they're on the website, they get a toaster pop-up ad with that same information, same look. And so they can immediately recognize that as, oh yeah, I remember seeing this on the web a few days ago. So it just kind of helps to keep them engaged, even if it's a little bit subconscious. Even if they see your ad in their peripheral vision, they will recognize it on some level.
I think the other really, lack of a better term, cool piece of that is as how this dynamic content is actually served on the website. So when we're talking about toasters and popovers and PID forms, we set up rules behind that so it doesn't pop up every single time that you're there. We have some institutions and some partners who actually say, you've got to visit this particular website 4 times, and then also visit this one other site 1 time before you're actually served this piece of dynamic content, because they want to know that how engaged you are and how deep you're looking into their institution before they really go out and say, okay, hey, here's some more information, interact with us some more. So it's not like your typical, pop over, like, when you jump on Amazon or something like that, and this, thing pops up and says, hey, you want to do this, or, hey, you want to do this. It just, a lot of times colleges and universities will put on the thing that, that pops up and it says you have to skip it the next time, that kind of thing. It's really distracting from the experience that the student is having. So having the behavioral intelligence platform with our dynamic content in play really allows that student to have that experience and not be overwhelmed by information at the same time. So it's a great mix. So we have purchased millions of names with Gretchen. We have designed beautiful things with words and photos and all kinds of cool things with Sarah. Now let's talk about where we're going to put it. So Tabitha, this is where you come in. So now we've purchased our names. We've created the outreach collateral. So now we turn to you, Tabitha. We have to deliver the goods to the students. So let's walk through this a bit for everyone. What does this look like?
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Chris. As Chris mentioned before, we're kind of moving away from just our traditional efforts. We're obviously staying in them, but we're also moving into digital. And digital plays a really, really great role with search names. Some areas I want to focus on today are determining placement with search, and that's placement geographically and as well as placement as far as platforms. What platforms are going to work best with your search names? I'd also like to look at different strategies to directly serve digital ads to our search list. So how do we actually reach those members with digital ads where they are? And then how do we build new inquiry pools based on these search lists? So first, let's dive into placements.
Good.
All right, so there's 2 things to look at when we're talking about placements. One is geography, and something to think about there is that when we're talking from a marketing standpoint, on average it takes 8 touch points for someone before they actually take an action. So they need to see 8 ads before they actually will fill out an application or submit a form. What's great there is we know where we're purchasing search names for, and then we can serve to those same geographic locations. The other thing that's really important to look at is, are our lists geography based or interest based? If they're geography based, we want to think about platforms that are heavy in geography. We want to think about geo-targeting. We want to get into Google and video. If we're looking at interest based, we really want to focus on those platforms that can tell us a lot about what our interests are. So we want to get into those social platforms, get more into video, get more into YouTube to make sure that they're serving people based on their interests. So now that we have kind of placement options,
I was
um,
gonna say, let me
yeah,
ask a question about, let me stop you right there. Let me ask a question about that, Tabitha. One of the things that I'm interested in is, um, everybody's talking about location, 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 and I know we're going to talk about lookalike audiences here in 2 seconds, but one of the things that you're looking out there is how location plays in the day-to-day operation of the institution as well, and our travel at the same time. So being able to um, backup travel with digital ad placement is also a really big thing. So, all right, so let's harness the power of the list-based digital targeting. How are we taking that list and making it worthwhile in our digital targeting?
yeah, perfect. Let's talk about that. All right, so now we have all of these names, we have all this content. The first thing that we really want to do is use the magic that is our platform to take these big lists and really tailor them down to those people that are more likely to engage. So what we can do is we can take this, say, list of 300,000 people, but we can take our predictive modeling to say, well, of those, these 100,000 are really more likely to actually engage with our ads. So then when we're thinking about serving our digital ads, we can make sure that we're really just serving it to those people that are more likely to engage. What happens then is we are increasing our inquiries and we're really maximizing our budget. So how that works a little bit on the back end is we're taking those lists, and our platforms like Google and Meta and Snapchat are IP matching them. So it's finding Sue, who's on our list, it's finding her device or her home, and then it's serving her digital ads on the social networks she's browsing, the websites she's browsing, while she's watching videos or interacting with friends. So we're really able to hone in and just maximize our inquiries and our budgets.
I think that's important, that maximizing your budget. So, and we're going to talk about how we measure here in a second. But one of the things that we're taking a look at is this migration of students. We got a cliff coming, and we've got people moving out of the Northeast, and they're moving south and west, and things like that. There's all kinds of crazy movement out there. Segmentation has always been around. It's been around for a long time, but now being able to get to the real nitty gritty, I think, is a big deal. So, let's talk about new and future students, lookalike audiences, because we're going to be looking for students all over the United States now. And if you're not, you're going to have a hard time hitting your enrollment goal.
Yeah, excellent. So this is a really fun thing that we can do with List is we can get in front of new potential students who are interacting in certain ways as our List memberships. So we're going to go in and create lookalike audiences. This is where we have computer learning and machine learning that gets a little bit creepy, but what it does is once we're serving ads to our List members, it's kind of following through them through the internet and through their journey. It's looking at what their interests are, what type of websites they're viewing, and then it's creating these lists of people that interact in similar ways. Now that we have these lists of people, we can then target them because we are under the impression that they are going to have the same interests and behavioral patterns as our list members. So this gives us an entirely new inquiry pool to look at.
It's an interesting concept, being able to kind of see where other students are, or different pockets around the United States or even around the world too, would be able to work our way in there. So as we turn the corner and head for home now, when we talk about the evaluations and metrics, it used to be that we would just do this annual review. We would put a strategy together late spring, early summer for what we were going to do with search. And then we would go out and do our search, and we would recruit and do our marketing, and then we would measure it again in the springtime and figure out what we were going to do after that. Um, but after we started into this digital age, now it becomes a little bit easier now. We can strategize, we can recruit, market, we measure constantly, and I'm going to show you how we measure here in a second. But you can optimize. You can optimize everything that you're doing in a digital format on a daily basis, a weekly basis, a monthly basis, a quarterly basis, an annual basis. But as you optimize, you can measure again and optimize and measure again. That's the beauty of digital, is that it's very easy to change, but it's necessary, because what ends up happening, again, is as I show the graphic here, you're creating this bigger circle, and this circle becomes a little tighter. It's a little bit more to manage, but you have better outcomes when you're able to manage the data and you're able to manage what's happening in the marketplace with your message. And finally, and Gretchen, I want to talk to you a little bit about this too, because I think partnerships are a really big deal here. We measure everything all the time. So
We
one of
do.
the things I would like you to kind of just give us an idea of is, when we're talking about return on investment and we're talking about measurements and things like that, how are you working with partners as an account executive on a daily, weekly, monthly basis to make sure that we are getting the results that we need for our partners?
Sure. So it is actually a team between myself and then what we have in a role called the client success manager. The client success manager and myself, between the two of us, will review campaigns on a weekly basis. As those campaigns if there are campaigns that seem to be underperforming, we will make revisions and optimizations to those campaigns. We keep a log of those optimizations. So any campaign we're running for you, you can go right in and see any optimizations that have been made on the campaign to see if it has increased performance. The other thing I will say is that as an account manager's role, we're conducting regular reviews with our partners that are through performance reports and ROI reports on a quarterly basis. So as we're going through, we're monitoring how the campaigns are performing, while at the same time thinking about this next and upcoming cycle, or maybe even the next semester if we're only doing fall planning and then spring planning. What do we need to change or make adjustments to what seems to be working really well and we can leave as is. So we're evaluating on a constant basis between our role and the client success manager's role, and then we're reporting those back out. The other feature, I think, or the other thing that I would say about that is that our partners have access to the dashboard and all the metrics in there to be able to go and look at any time how their campaigns are performing. It's a pretty easy and painless dashboard to use, where you can go in and actually see exactly the results in real time of how campaigns are performing. So in the interims, when we're not doing an ROI or a performance review with them, they still have the ability to go in and see that data
Yeah, I think
themselves.
that's important, that sharing of the data 24 hours a day is a big deal, and I like how we do the optimization, and we work as a team. I mean, it's not just we have a bunch of people working behind the scenes with our data scientists as well, crunching the numbers and helping us out with that too. So, ladies, I want to thank you very, very much for your time and your expertise today. I know that the audience learned a lot, and if they didn't, they can download the video later and watch it again. But ladies, thank you so very much. Really appreciate your time, and I really, really love working with all three of you. So it's been great. So thanks, guys. One last question for all of our participants today, as we look at this last question here. We know it's early, but how do you feel about your top of funnel right now? When you're measuring inquiries, applications, campus visits, go ahead, Sarah, pop it up there. Are we ahead of schedule? Are we on target so far? Are we a little behind, or are we way behind? Where are you right now in your top end of the funnel? And everybody voted. Throw it up there. Dun, dun, dun. So it looks like everybody. Oh, there's the poll. Looks like we're having a little technical difficulty. That's okay. One of the big, we'll move forward here. We'll just get into today's takeaways. I think the biggest one right now is be smart with your name acquisition purchases. Remember, this is a long game, folks. Like Gretchen said, this could happen every day, every week, every month. You would be able to go ahead and make sure that you are buying over time and that you budget accordingly. 2, connect with relevant messages based on behavior. Just sending messages out there blindly is not something that is going to work really well for you. you need to have relevant messages and base it upon what the student is doing with you at that time. Lastly, engage your search data to inform your digital strategy. If you're going to be placing ads and doing segmentation and stuff like that, use that data that you used to buy those names to place your digital assets into play. There's no better way to do that than using the models that are there for you as you build it out. So that is all we've got for today. Let me just say this. We would love to see you at NACAC. You can visit us. We will have a giant booth at NACAC in Houston, but we're also hosting a session on how to achieve enrollment goals with a resilient admissions team. Very pleased to be working with Colin Palmer at Kent State University and Lee Wishing from Grove City College. We're going to have a great session on Saturday morning for everybody. And everybody's also invited to our rooftop party, which is Friday night, but you need to register ahead of time for that. So check the website for details on that. And